Today we have the pleasure of interviewing Walter Lambert. Walter is a native Oklahoman, born in Duncan, and we have Walter to thank for our movies on Saturday and for Inquiring Minds and for a lot of our audio video around here. Linda and Walter moved into Epworth Villas in 2008. Walter, what brought you and Linda to Epworth?
Thank you for your question. Linda and I had retired from the Boston Public Schools in 2004, 4 years earlier. We had moved to New Hampshire, which is a lovely place to live. But we had begun to think about retirement, and we explored possibilities in New Hampshire. It was very expensive, and my parents had been at Epworth Villas, so I made the telephone call, and they were building houses, and said, aha, we can go to Epworth Villa and live in a house. So we decided to come.
Well, great. How many children do you have, and where are they?
Well, we have 2 children. Our son is a lawyer. He's in Tulsa. He works for the Williams Company as their employment lawyer. And given today's environment, that's a big deal, yes. And our daughter is a special education teacher in Arlington, Texas. And she's even, when your children start thinking about retirement, you think, are we that old? Yes, yes.
Tell us about your family history a little bit.
I was born in Duncan, Oklahoma, as you said. I have a bucket that my great-grandfather brought with him on April 22nd, 1889 for the run in Oklahoma, and it's been in the family now for over 100 years. But in any case, so indeed, our family goes back a long way in terms of Oklahoma history. Born in Duncan, my father worked for Halliburton, and then he moved to Oklahoma City. I attended Creston Hills Elementary School in Northeast in the 7th and 8th grade. And the biggest event, at the age of 13, I had my first date with Linda.
Right.
7 years later, we were married.
Oh my!
And thus, it's been 61 years since our marriage. So, in any case, what does a 13-year-old boy know? Nothing. Girls are a complete mystery. So I look back on it and just say it was absolute luck. There's no other explanation for it.
I'm glad we got to that. When did you become interested in history?
Well, it's interesting. I thought about the question. As a child going through school and so forth, I was always interested in history. I went to OU. I was supposed to be a lawyer. My grandfather was a lawyer. My father was a lawyer. I was supposed to be a lawyer. And in my sophomore year, I took the first history class. The professor was amazing. I found myself laughing in history class. I thought, gee, a course you can take and you laugh is probably a pretty good thing to major in. So I majored in history and finished it at OU. What do you do with a history degree? Didn't have a clue. So when I graduated from OU, I had no idea what I was going to do. But I finished 4 years of ROTC at OU. And so I was committed to be a lieutenant in the United States Army for 2 years. So to see the world, you're in the Army, so they sent me to Fort Sill.
Right.
So, but at the time, there was a huge surplus of lieutenants in the Army. In an artillery battery, which I was a part of, there were 6 second lieutenants. So what do you do with 6 second lieutenants? Well, they had to find jobs for you, so I ended up teaching exciting military subjects like parades and formations and so forth. And he sent me to a 2-week course on how to teach in the Army. Ta-da! So with my degree from Fort Sill on how to teach in the Army, I taught. And it was fun. I told stories and I told jokes and the audience laughed and I seemed to enjoy it. I was performing. I thought, gee, this is fun. So I had then decided I perhaps would be a teacher. Now you have to realize in the 1950s, who's the teacher? Well, there were two types. There were women and there were coaches. And I was neither. But despite that, I decided, so I took my education courses and so forth. In 1963, in a little Nash Rambler, recalls cars,
Yes.
drove from Oklahoma City or from Norman to Cleveland, Ohio in January. It was 19 degrees below zero when we arrived to take my first teaching job in the Cleveland, Ohio public schools. And so that began a 40-year career in teaching.
Wow.
Teaching history.
And all over. I mean, you taught, where did you teach?
I've taught for almost 40 years. I've taught in 10 different schools in 7 or 8 different states. Oklahoma and Texas and Indiana and New York and Massachusetts. Couldn't hold on to a job. No, just kidding.
Or it couldn't hold on to you.
Well, whatever. But in the meantime, I'd gone back to school and I had a master's degree from the University of Michigan. Got a PhD in history from the University of Texas. Why did I go to Austin, Texas for graduate school? It was cheap. Back in those days, with all that oil money, the University of Texas was giving full scholarships. So with a 2-year-old baby and Linda and no job and no money, we get in the car and drive to Austin, Texas. We were there for 3 years, got my PhD in history. I had planned on teaching in college. In 1970, there were no college teaching jobs in anything, history or physics or chemistry. So college teaching jobs were extremely difficult to get. So one day I got a letter about a school in Dallas, Texas, a girls' school. I had never even heard of the school. Hockaday was the name. I had not intended to go back to the school and get a PhD to teach the daughters of the blue bloods of Texas. But a job is a job. It turned out to be a terrific job. I was there for 10 years. Actually, I taught at Hockaday for a longer period of time than any other teaching job I ever had. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was terrific. Then later on, we went to Indiana and so forth, and finally ended up as I was toward the end of my career, teaching at its oldest school in the United States, a school called Boston Latin Academy. Well, it started in 1635, a year before Harvard. They still teach Latin, required 4 years. It's a public school, but it's an exam school. So these are children of not lawyers and doctors. These are children of restaurant workers and policemen and people who work in the government in Boston. These were kids that saw Boston Latin as their stepping stone, basically. They go to Boston Latin School, they finish there, then they go off to an elite school. We send a number of kids to Harvard. They were terrific. Hard workers, motivated. They knew that academics were central. So it was a delightful way to finish my career.
And was that the most rewarding teaching job?
Well, those were the 2 schools I taught in. I taught in a number of other schools. I taught in girls' schools, all boys' schools, co-ed schools, public schools, private schools.
Covered.
Including a Cassidy here in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you did. Well, we are so excited that you were here today. I always feel so smart after I talk to you, and it's been a blast. Thank you for your candor.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.